Yes, we are live and in color. What? Come on, baby. Boy, I'm telling you, this is it right here. Intimate Discoveries, Heart to Heart, the podcast designed to bring you unadulterated, straightforward conversation around what it means to be intimate. In a world where conversations are normally surface, dive deep, bringing in subject matter experts, heartfelt stories, and testimonies of overcoming and what it truly means to be vulnerable. You know that vulnerability is the birthplace for intimate relationships, and we encourage you to explore those possibilities. I am your host, Champ Frank. We're going to have Golden coming in today. Let's go! We're here, right here. The champ is here. Golden is here. Yes, we are champions. Yes, we're champs. We are overcoming life. We're overcoming trials and tribulations. And we're encouraging you to push through. Yes. Man, this thing is be jamming, boy. Yes. That's right. Love on me. Ow! Yes, my ladies and gentlemen. I love it when you love on me. Oh my God. Thank you all for coming on and being here and supporting me for another show. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, we are pushing on episode 80 right now. And I started this journey last year. And oh my gosh, Golden is here, ladies and gentlemen. Drums, please. Ow! Come on, Golden. She's on her way right now, live and in color. Hello. Hey.
How's it going?
It is going wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, Golden is here. Yes.
Yeah. How are you?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. Call me the butler. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. The butler. Did he join? Did he leave? Where did he go? But anyway.
You know I can't see any of your.
Hold on. Let me see. Let me do this here. Let me see if I can do this here. Where are you? Let me see. Where are you? Right. Let me see. Remove from live. Follow. I'm gonna follow you. And then let me see if I cannot add you. They gonna let me add you as a collaborator. Man, this is crazy. But anyhow, let me see. Oh no, WhatsApp can't do that. I don't know. But huh?
It's okay.
It is okay. You sure it's okay? All right, let me see. Hold on, because I'm trying to. Bella Blue. Okay. I don't know what we gotta do, but we gonna fix this because I need you to see everything too.
Yeah.
Ow! Huh?
How is it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay.
Great.
We gotta get you a microphone tied to you.
You're right. I do need a microphone.
Yes, you do. But until that moment comes, we are good to go. Because God is good to us. Um, what has been going on with me? Oh my gosh, we're launching. This is episode 80. Yes. We did this thing. Can you believe it's been a year ago?
Wow. 1 year?
1 year.
Today?
I don't know if it's today, but listen, we are up on 1 year. I'll go back to the first episode, but I'm telling you, we're coming into December, and this is great stuff. I'm thankful. I'm excited that we stayed the course, and you're here and bringing that soft flavor, right?
I tried.
No, you do a great job. You do a great job, and I am grateful and thankful for you, for all of your contributions to the show, and that's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna ask, how are you doing?
You know what? I am going to be 100% transparent with you and the audience. I'm struggling today.
Uh-huh.
I'm struggling today. Today has just been a very hard day for me. Since the moment my feet hit the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I talked about practicing gig, being gentle and intentional and showing grace. And I didn't do too well with my gig today.
Well, God says His grace is sufficient.
Yes, His grace is sufficient, but also God understands us, and
Mm-hmm.
He wants us to give ourselves to show each other grace.
Absolutely.
And to ourselves. So I failed considerably today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we've been talking about trauma. And so it's today, I realized that my healing and it's been over a year since my husband died.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized today, I actually got one of my psych books out.
Mm-hmm.
And that grief and trauma, and I put it together. Today, I realized that I am suffering from grief trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's long term. It's called long term. And so I just sat and I'm like, why am I just, I just have days like today. I went to my physical therapy because my back killing me.
Mm-hmm.
On that. And it's just a rainy, gloomy day, but I was so focused on my husband's death today and what triggered it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the office and I said, today's going to be the day where I go in this office and I sit down and I start shredding stuff and arranging stuff, and because he's always handled that. And so I'm opening the files and on the computer, and I see this note from his handwriting. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at his handwriting, and I just stood still. And then I just started screaming. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't stop crying. And I could not, for some reason, I just could not just get myself together, because I was so focused today on how he passed. Mm. And those memories come back on how he passed. And I'm questioning myself about, what could I have done differently? So he would not have been, uncomfortable or in such pain. What could I have said differently? But just images. And so I realized today, it's like, what, Laria? You are going through long-term effects of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't answer my phone. My friends were calling me and my family. And so I think around like a little after 6, my son calls.
Mm-hmm.
And I answer the phone. And then his first words are, Mom, are you okay? And I'm thinking, like, how did he know?
Mm-hmm.
He says, Mom, something came through the universe. I don't know.
Right.
But he said, how are you doing? And then I just like started crying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay. He said, I still feel it. And so I tell everyone, trauma can cause so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is like a grief. It's like this nagging itch
Mm-hmm.
that you just can't seem to scratch it enough. But I'm here to tell you that I will get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And with counseling, I'm going back to my grief therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm taking the steps to get a handle on what I am feeling, because I'm so focused on the way he died and seeing those pictures in my head. And so I know that I need to get back into grief therapy for myself, because it's not going to help me as an individual, and it's not going to help my relationships I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just where I am today.
Well, we thank you for sharing, and my heart goes out to you and your family. I know Archie was a pillar in the family, right?
Yeah.
He was that stud in the wall. Bam! You can just you can put anything up there. Bam! And he was reliable like that, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciated him too. Very very good man. Caring, gentle, kind, thoughtful, and so I understand how you can, you know, be grieving such a wonderful person. Because he was just that. Um, so is there anything, huh?
I said it takes time. It takes time to get through, and we can get through trauma.
Right, we can.
We can get through traumatic experiences, but we have to understand that what we are experiencing is trauma, PTSD. And we have to understand that sometimes we can't deal with it alone.
Right.
We need some help. We need to get those tools to understand how to deal with it, to recognize triggers.
To recognize triggers. And so we have three solutions in dealing with untreated trauma. We do have 3 of those that we're going to share with the group. Before we get into that, I want to say to you, there was a story of a young lady who husband passed. I don't know. I probably told you this story before, but it bears repeating again. About a young lady who husband had passed away, and her friends like, you need to go see this guy because he's able to deal with, take care of those pains and stuff. And so she goes to the priest and tells the priest, my husband passed away for so long, and I'm having this pain, and my friend told me to come here, and she wants the pain to go away. I want the pain to go away, and um, so he told her that the pain that she's experiencing is a reflection of how much she loved him. And she said, "Oh my gosh, and I don't want you to pray for me. I want to keep it, right?" Because it was that reflection of how much she loved him and how much she loved her. That pain was a symbol of the strength and the love that they had. And as long as she had it, she knew that she had him. And that was just beautiful. And I like sharing that.
That is a beautiful story.
Yes, thank you so much. We have Gabby Leah. Gabby here. Are you there,
Oh,
Gabby?
hi.
Hi.
I am sorry. I came in late, so I'm really not sure where the conversation is. Maybe call on me a little later.
No, okay, well, we can definitely do that. You can definitely join in. We're talking about, the impact of untreated trauma on relationships.
Hmm.
And right before we get started, we were just sharing how Golden was going through the um, grief of losing her husband over a year ago, and the challenges that we still have, in spite of trying to be strong or trying to move on with life or whatever it is that you it still happens.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel sad. You're gonna grieve, and you're gonna miss your loved one. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're dealing with it in a healthy way, and,
Okay.
and that's what she was sharing.
Oh, all right. My situation is a little different. I'm going through a divorce, and I think that a lot of childhood trauma impacted my estranged husband's way of um, showing love or not showing love, being afraid of intimacy,
Hmm.
um, um, reacting to things in a way that might have been put upon him when he was a child.
Hmm.
I grew up in a home where I never really saw my parents fight. I certainly never heard them fight. I knew, my mother would have her jaws tight about something my dad would say, but I never, in my extended family, aunts, uncles, never had people cursing at each other and calling each other names, that kind of fighting, which
Hmm.
very, I think, below the belt. And in retrospect, I think that a lot of that happened in my marriage has to do with how he was traumatized as a child, and I tried to see through that and tried counseling and everything, but it got to the point where I wasn't feeling safe,
Hmm.
and a lot of the things that were said to me were so unbelievably, in my opinion, cruel and demeaning that I just couldn't make any more excuses for it.
Hmm.
So that's why I kind of tuned in. It was talking about how untreated trauma impacts relationships, and I really think that had a lot to do with my husband's issues with um, intimacy and closeness and treating your partner the way you would want to be treated. I guess that's the way he was treated as a kid.
Hmm.
So that was all.
Yeah, and I think what she's referring to is called transgenerational trauma. When you transfer that trauma from a child and you take it into your adulthood, and you just don't know how to manage, or maybe you don't understand because you grew up in such a dysfunctional home, and whatever went on in the home, if it was violent, if it was sexual, it tends to fester over years. And some people will get to be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 60, 70 years old and not realize that the trauma they had experienced as a child had just festered into their adulthood. And they don't understand that it has traumatized them to the point where they don't know how to function in a relationship. So they might experience moments of being hateful or saying really nasty things, and even becoming violent, drinking and alcohol. And so if you don't recognize those things, then it's going to the cycle is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So what the caller was saying was that she thinks that her husband had experienced some childhood trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that he was saying to her, she mentioned had said some very mean things to her, and that tells me that it's transgenerational trauma that has been untreated. And so if he goes into another relationship, guess what? The behavior is going to be the same until he recognizes that he needs help.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to.
Yeah, I tell you, Gabby, I was married 22 years, and I didn't know that I had untreated trauma. I didn't know that going to therapy was the purpose. The purpose of going to therapy was to improve my relationships with my wife and my kids and how I interact with other individuals. I did not know that. I was just going to therapy just to be talking and and sharing about how I feel and how I think everybody else is treating me wrong and everything else. And so I didn't know until my ex-wife was telling me that she's about to leave, and then I go to therapy. And then we're there, and she's like, "You didn't tell him this, you didn't tell him that." I was like, I started taking it more serious. I started sharing other stuff. But by that time, it was too late. And so I shared that to say um, that I didn't know. I thought, like I said, I was going to therapy for almost 10 years. And come to find out that I didn't, I had a chemical imbalance. And so a lot of the anger, a lot of the heart palpitations was not manageable because I was not on medication. I couldn't exercise this. I can only exercise for so many minutes, right? I can't just drop down and do 20 push-ups in the house and the situation is going on. But I needed to have some medication to regulate that chemical imbalance. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was genetics. And so that's why what that's why we have these opportunities, so that individuals can share and understand that they're not going through this alone, and that oftentimes our partners don't know, because who has given them the space to to unravel some of the stuff that they experience. And that's where I was, and that's how I when I look back, I am being honest with myself and with my audience to say I didn't know. And then the other part was things were going so well in my marriage that I didn't want to see anything else. Everything else was I was winning, you know. So I couldn't be reached, and that's another part that I try to encourage couples, men, individuals, to remain teachable, because you never know how badly that you're missing it, right?
Right. So, as I was saying, that the first step is to uncover that, it's so couples go to therapy because for whatever reason they're not getting along, or they feel that they're going in separate areas. So the first thing we do is we say we need to go to couples therapy. We need to go figure out this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So you get into therapy, you get into counseling, and we ask the questions of what's going on. Tell me, what's happening in the relationship, and then you meet with the couples together, and then you meet with each individual person.
Mm-hmm.
So during those individual sessions, you tend to find out what is going on with each other. And as people start talking, the therapist or counselor or coach should start to recognize, what? This person is really dealing with some childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Never understood. They never knew it because it was just so generic to them. It was just so common.
Mm-hmm.
If you're raised in a home and your parents are alcoholics and they're fighting and they're fussing and there's domestic violence, and every time you turn around the police are showing up at your door, as a child you think that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
You hear dad cursing mom out. You hear mom cursing dad out and just calling and throwing things. And you think that's normal. You think that that's how a couple functions.
Mm-hmm.
So as you get older and you go into these relationships and you get married, well, guess what? 9 times out of 10, you are going to have that identical destructive behavior towards your spouse. And so if you don't recognize that something is off, and I know with you, Frank, that you said that you had a chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
But if you set that chemical imbalance aside, would you say that you suffered from some sort of trauma?
Oh, absolutely. I did. I dealt with trauma, and the part for me which made it worse was that as I grew in rank and knowledge, I tried to be more protective of the little guy in me. I tried to protect him, and so a lot of a lot of deflection that I would do was to protect my, the inner me, and to not allow people to, and the part was that I was uncomfortable being vulnerable.
Right.
And so because I didn't get an opportunity to share, I didn't. No one really cared about me. I told you I grew up in a drug house. My dad was shot when I was in 6th grade. He was abusive before he got shot. We would see him and my stepmom fighting, and him and my mom fighting. We got all that stuff, right? And then you get people shot, and we told you a guy came in and robbed us at gunpoint, and so much trauma. And then I go into the military and still untreated trauma.
Right.
Right? I couldn't tell them I'm dealing with stuff. No, I got to be ready to go.
Right.
I got to focus on military readiness. Right? Or else they're going to send me back to Chicago. And I can't go back. So I got to hold it in. And then I find my ex-wife, and then I I decide I want to be in love. And it's the best woman ever. And then we're gonna get married, and then I still have untreated trauma. And then I try to hold it together as much as I can, and then it's just little stuff that bothers me because the kids are getting away with stuff that I didn't get away with. Right? She's 7, right, Frank? She's 5, right? Why are you down there with the 7-year-old? Why are you competing with you? But I couldn't turn it off
because you didn't know.
Because
you did not know what you had experienced as a child is following you into adulthood, has followed you into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So competing against a 5-year-old, shame on you, Franklin.
Well,
so that's a fun.
But the thing is that because of the chemical imbalance, whenever my heart would start racing, I had to do something. I had to put things in place to get it to go down, or to have the people to back off a little bit. And that's the part that I didn't realize, that I was fighting the enemy within.
Right.
And the only way that I could manage it is through medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Is through seeing a therapist and seeing a psychiatrist, showing up to the appointments, and watch this, telling the truth. TRUF, truth. and that's something that wasn't emphasized, because I can't remember. I think I would say I was the first person to go to therapy in my family. Right? I don't know anybody in my family who said that they going through therapy today.
Well, it even today, still there are people out there. I mean, let's go back as far as 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to see a therapist, if you were in any type of counseling, well, guess what? Or even mention to someone, if you thought about, talking to a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
the reaction. I'm not crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But now we know
Mm-hmm.
that therapy is so healthy. Therapy is just so good for the mind, for the body, for your health, physical, mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We have learned that therapy helps us to heal.
It does.
Therapy is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And using this tool gives us resources.
Mm-hmm.
So we can heal, so we can move forward. No, we will never forget. We will never forget. But getting the proper tools and resources, mm-hmm. and understanding those triggers,
mm-hmm.
that's powerful.
It is.
That's power. That is like getting power, having your power restored. Because we feel that, if I'm in therapy, people are crazy. Well, guess what? I don't give a damn who knows I'm in therapy. Because right. It is good to me and it is good for me.
Absolutely.
Because I need to be the best that I can be for myself, for my family, and for my friends. And if I can't be, I'm no good to anyone, not even myself.
And that part is important because you have to value the relationships. And that you want to get better for the relationships.
Right.
Right? Because as long as therapy is not going to therapy, I think, is selfish. And really just thinking that you can handle life and you can handle stuff and not being considerate of the fact that you are. Well, let me keep it with me because I can't speak for everybody. I realized that um, not going to therapy, that I was really hurting my kids. I was hurting, my ex-wife and and her friends. Just not having the ability just to sit down and be quiet. You always gotta find something to say, don't you? And we weren't even talking to you, right? But again, that takes courage to know that that you need help.
Right, right. I mean, for example, when I came to the realization that my grief trauma, and I figured this out myself,
Mm-hmm.
that the trauma, the grief trauma that I am going through, that I realized today was the actual, it's the visual. It's the visual, the visual of watching how my husband died.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And what stays in my head. Seeing him, you know, one week he's doing okay, and then boom, the next week it goes downhill so quickly to watch him. And so I have these, I realized that seeing this piece of paper that he had written on in the office just was a trigger for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was uncontrollable.
Right. That part.
And I'm just like, what is going on with me? Like, what is going on with me? And that's when I got my books out and I started looking it up. And I'm like, oh my God, it's right there. It is right there that certain things will trigger me. And just, it's almost like it enhances my behavior in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
But a negative, believe it or not, a negative enhancement, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And so we have these 5 challenges, top 5 challenges for individuals navigating life with untreated trauma. And so if you're in a relationship with someone who has untreated trauma, here are the challenges that I know that I had, right? Emotional regulation, right? Number one is emotional regulation. Struggling to control emotions, leading to impulsive reactions and conflicts in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Number 2, trust issues. Difficulty trusting others, often due to past betrayals or traumatic experiences. And number 3 is low self esteem. Lingering feelings of worthlessness or inadequacy impacting self confidence and relationships. These are the challenges that the individual have in the relationship, right? Difficulty with vulnerability. I know one of our listeners was saying that being, having problems with being intimate, right? Or being intimate with someone. And that's that vulnerability, as we talked about here oftentimes, is that vulnerability is the birthplace for intimate relationships. And if I can't be vulnerable with you, then I can't be intimate with you. It's not going to grow. It's not going to be organic. Right. And then we have patterns of toxic relationships. Well, let me go back here to fear of vulnerability, the difficulty with vulnerability, fear of being open and vulnerable, leading to shallow connections. Like, and I know that, with going through a divorce and coming to a point where the difficulty with being vulnerable and those shallow connections, those add up over time. Right? We talked about, with me being married 20 years, 22 years, and just fear of opening up just twice a month equated to 480 times that we had shallow connections. 480 shallow connections, just like bam. All because I was having challenges with being vulnerable. And then we have patterns of toxic relationships. a tendency to attract or stay in unhealthy relationships, repeating familiar cycles of pain. And those just the top 5 challenges that we have, that the individual have. We ain't even talking about the person having the challenges with dealing with this person. Right? We talking about how you having trouble just maintaining day to day.
Right.
Right? That and we say top 10, we say top 5. And these 5 are huge.
Those 5 are very huge. They're extremely powerful. And, like I said before, if you don't recognize it, it's kind of like the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it.
Uh-huh.
So if you don't recognize, and I don't want to use the word broken, if you don't recognize that you are bent,
Mm-hmm.
then how are you going to mend that bend? You have to recognize it. You have to understand that how you are feeling, how you are coping with life, what you are saying to your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, the unkind words, the meanness, the behaviors, your violent behaviors, your anxiety, your depression. It's coming from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from somewhere. And until you understand where it's coming from, you are going to have a very difficult life. You are going to be depressed. You're going to suffer from stress, anxiety. It can lead to health issues. You might think that you're having a heart attack, and it just might be anxiety. I know that it happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought after my husband died, a few months later, I thought I was having a heart attack. I really did. And my husband took me to the emergency room. Oh, it was terrible. And they said, Miss Turner, you're not. Has anything, has anything changed in your life? They could not find anything wrong with me. I had my blood pressure wasn't high, my cholesterol was great. Has anything changed in your life? And I said, yes, my husband passed away. And they're like, bingo. Bingo. You are experiencing trauma, and it's affecting your health.
Oh my gosh. I remember when my grandfather, my grandmother passed away, and my grandfather was there, and they were married for like 50 years, like 50 some years that they were married. And his wife, they passed away. She passed away. We had hospice. She passed away, and he goes upstairs, and he's laying with his wife as she's passed away. And then he comes downstairs, and he's like, I don't know what to do, because for the last 50 years she has been my answer. She has been there to help me to manage day to day, and so now I don't know what to do. And all I can say to him was, how you feel right now is right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry that happened, and it happened this way. um and so again, it's just being sensitive to that stuff. And I know for me that I didn't, and it's, again, going through trauma therapy, until she told me to put pen to paper and write down those thoughts, and where did I get those thoughts from, and how did I figure that out, and then I had that moment all by myself, and and the Lord said to me, "Hey Frank, was that the only way you could have built trust with your daughters? Is seeing them vacuum in straight lines? Is that the only way?" I was like, "No, that was not the only way. But this was the way that you was focused." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so now I have to challenge every other. I have to now challenge those thoughts. Where did you get that from? Right? Who told you that? Who taught you that? And now, is there a different way for you to deal with the right now? Because those situations that are bothering you is not happening right now, right? I'm listening. Um, Again, so how does this is just a question for you? How does past traumas show up in our closest relationships, even when we don't expect them to?
How does it show up?
Yeah, how does that past trauma, like you were saying, those triggers? It shows up in triggers, right? And go. I'm listening.
I think for me, I think that when things happen consistently, I know for me, I recognized it today because it's like every time I see something that Archie had written or something in that office, it's that office that triggers me because he stayed in that office. And so, I'll pick up a book and there is a note in the book, something that he had written, and that will trigger me. It's a pattern of behaviors that are sometimes you don't recognize them. I mean, it could be words that someone is saying to you. It could be, someone, even just doing this that trigger you. I mean, it's just recognizing those things that it's almost like things that irritate you, but somehow you take it to the next level where it not only irritates you, you almost lose it when someone does something. And those are things that we call triggers. And so if we don't recognize those triggers, or if we do recognize the triggers, we have to know how to manage those triggers. What is something that I can do to manage these triggers, so I will not lose it, so I will not burst into tears in front of people, so I will not feel like I'm going to slap someone. Because sometimes, we are in a situation and someone will say something to us and it's like a trigger. And you don't want to say, please don't say that again. Because then it will escalate to something else. Because the person that you are speaking to doesn't know that what they have just said or done or didn't do has triggered you. So we have to manage the way we handle those triggers. Because we could be explaining to the world every day about our triggers. Please don't do this. Please don't say that. Please don't do this because it triggered me. Unless it's our family or our spouse or close friend or whomever. It's someone at work and they do something and it triggers you. Then you have to have the tools how to manage that trigger, how to calm down, how to breathe, how not to react. Because it's the reaction that gets us into trouble.
It is the reaction. And so one time I remember being in church. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that deep perspective. We really appreciate your contribution. And so, looking at one of the things that I learned as far as a trigger is like a firecracker, right? And it depends on how short the stem is, right? It depends on how short the stem is that firecracker goes off. And so, one of the things that therapy can help you is to lengthen the stem on the firecracker, helping you to lengthen the stem because something's gonna light it. Something's gonna light the stem, absolutely. But if that stem is long enough, you can cut it off before it actually touches the actual dynamite or the gunpowder in the firecracker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way of looking at the beautiful thing about going to therapy is
Mm-hmm.
that it because again, there life happens.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know when there's something that's going to trigger you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what you can do is in between triggers, work on extending that stem so that you don't blow up every time something happens that reminds you of a past trauma.
Right. And many times, especially when you're with family or someone that you're close to and you recognize these triggers, and it's okay to say, hey, you did XYZ, and I need you to understand that what you said or what you did,
Mm-hmm.
that's a trigger for me.
Right.
And it's okay to say that to someone that you're very close to, a friend, a family, or whatever. But unfortunately, when you're in the work environment and people are always doing something.
You're always doing something.
They're always doing something. So that's why it is so important to identify your triggers and to understand those triggers and to know how to manage those triggers. And sometimes, we just have to, in order, one way to manage a trigger is just to take a break. Excuse yourself. I need to take a break or a timeout or whatever, and walk away and get your thoughts together.
Mm-hmm.
If it's breathing, if it's stretching, if it's turning on some music, going to your car and something. And
Right.
it's okay to take a break. Practice mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Also a good solution. It can help reduce anxiety, and it will also help to bring down that emotion that you are experiencing.
Right. And so we have 5 solutions to, and you mentioned, you may have touched on some of them, but I want to give some of these solutions to address the challenges both men and women have with in the dealing with individuals who have untreated trauma, or if you have untreated trauma, right? Here's a couple of solutions for men. For men's challenges, we number one, we encourage couples therapy to provide couples therapy provides a guided space for both partners to navigate and understand trauma's effects on the relationship. And right, number two is we set boundaries for emotional energy. Discuss and agree on boundaries to avoid emotional burnout and maintain relationship balance. This is so important. Oh my gosh, right? Practice patience and empathy. This is for men. We want you to practice patience and empathy. Regularly remind yourself of the trauma's roots, avoiding blame and practicing patience in emotionally charged situations. And then we want to prioritize open communication. Share fears and frustrations openly with a focus on solutions rather than criticism. Oh my gosh. And then number 5, you want to encourage your partner's personal growth. Support the partner in engaging in individual therapy, self care practices, and other healing journeys. Right? That's what we want to do for men. Right? And then for women, We got 5 solutions for them to address these challenges. And we want to, for one, we want women to implement self care routines.
Mm-hmm.
Prioritize self care to prevent emotional exhaustion and to recharge, preserving personal mental health. Right. And then we want to create a safe space for vulnerability. Gently encourage the partner to share their experiences without judgment, reinforcing a safe, understanding environment. And that sometimes is hard, not appearing judgmental.
Hmm.
Right? Not appearing judgmental. I ain't judging you. Well, you did. You know, you said that was wrong the way I said that. Right? It could be judgmental. And then we have set realistic expectations. Understand that trauma recovery is a gradual process, adjusting expectations for progress and commitment accordingly. And then we have number 4, engaging, like you said earlier, engage in mindful communication. Use I feel statements to communicate frustrations and needs without causing defensiveness or withdrawal. Because we always, with men, we know we can get on the defense and we can go back in our shell and we can withdraw on demand. We can do it on demand, right? And part of that is because we have. I know for me, I had about 30 years of feeling like nobody cared about my feelings, and so it was easy for me to withdraw my emotions or feelings because why am I sharing this? Because nobody care about it, right? And then the fifth thing is we want to encourage individual and couples healing. We want to promote individual therapy as well as joint sessions to foster healing from both personal and relational angles.
So when someone is going through, difficulty dealing with whatever it is they may be going through, I think, setting boundaries with people,
Mm-hmm.
especially your loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
because, when you are going through something and no one can tell you how you're feeling, no one can tell you, oh, like I have a sister. I won't say her name. She is,
Felicia. I said Felicia. I,
no,
I know it's not her name. I know
I
it's
don't
not her
have
name. I
Felicia,
know.
right? But she is just forever saying this, and it triggers the heck out of me. If she's upset about something, and she's upset about something,
Mm-hmm.
first thing she will say is, "Okay, well, I'm all set."
Oh my gosh.
That's a trigger.
It is. It triggered me.
So she's not okay.
Right.
But it's like, so I'm like, okay, so if that doesn't work for you, sister,
Mm-hmm.
just say no.
Mm-hmm.
People, we feel that we can't say no often. But if it feels right, you don't want to do it, you just don't feel like it just doesn't work for you, it's okay just to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And move on, walk away, next, move on. But don't say I'm all set.
Right.
That will set me off. But it's just, we have to understand that, we must set boundaries with people.
And you got to set boundaries for yourself.
You absolutely do have to set.
I'm talking about you got to tell yourself you're not going over there.
You just sit there and you say
Self, and you like, and you right. And I'm telling you, that is so. Golden. Let me tell you, I had a situation last week where a friend of mine called me and she said, "Hey Frank, I'm going to be out of town, and can you pick up my son to take him to this event that you all having at your frat house?" I'm like, sure, no problem. I can, let me see if I can do whatever. And so in our program, no adult should be alone with the teen or with any participants in the program. You have to be too deep, right? That means that needs to be another person, another adult there when you're interacting with the teen or anybody else, right? And so I'm like, well, his mom is gonna be on the phone. I'm gonna pick him up, and she's gonna be FaceTime while we're there. Well, they're like, no, that's not that, right? Two people need to be there, right? We don't know what's going on. And then so what happened for me? I'm like upset. I'm like, y'all don't trust me. This here and that there. This is my friend,
With you.
right? But listen, I'm getting worked up because I'm 51 and I gotta follow these rules. And so what I did, what helped me was I backed myself out of that situation. And I said, hey, listen, this is your responsibility, lady, to get your son there. What about an Uber? And she's like, I didn't even think about that. It was $17. And I'm telling you, when I set that boundary for myself,
Yeah.
to say I'm not getting in that situation, because when I put myself in that situation and they set up these rules for me to follow, I get triggered. And so, in order for you to minimize the trigger, bring yourself out. And I just felt so much better. And that was growth. So those boundaries that we're talking about it goes both ways.
It does.
You got to set the boundary for individuals, and then you also got to set the boundary for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't handle it. Like the Bible say, flee from sin. Flee. He say you flee from sin because you can't handle sin on your own. You ain't that strong. Right? Oh my gosh.
You have to recognize those things that bother you, those things that are going to initiate behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't recognize those things, it's kind of like you were setting yourself up. So you have to always, it's almost, and I don't want to say you have to always be on guard, but you do.
When
You
it
have to understand those things that bother you, that are going to truly trigger you.
right.
And so part of that is, it's a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find what coping mechanism works for you, because something can jump off at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to deal with it. But how you deal with it is the important.
What is the healthy way of dealing with this situation?
Yep.
And the healthy way of doing it should be verifiable from another person, right? To say, well, this was the best way for me to handle this situation. And then you go and talk to somebody like, where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that from? That is not the way you handle that, boss.
Right.
Right? And then having the courage to go back and apologize for you being wrong. Right? Because you deflected or you pushed on that person. You caused that whole situation. And because one thing is that we haven't done the work. You haven't done the work. There's no way in the world I'm gonna expect you to do 15 curls.
Right.
No, you have not been practicing, bro.
Right.
You have not been practicing, so no, you're not gonna do it. I don't care. You cannot will yourself to doing 15 pull-ups on that bar.
So it's like practice acceptance.
Practice acceptance.
Yeah, practice acceptance.
Right.
Because if you practice that time and time again, it will be easier for you to manage it.
It will be easier for you to manage, and it gives you that ability, that opportunity to extend the stem on the
Yeah,
dynamite,
yeah, yeah. And
right?
it's a healthy way of managing
Yes,
those things that trigger us. It's
right.
very so. You
Yeah.
know, it's just, I tell people I'm not wasting my God given breath on
but you might not waste your God given breath on that, but there are some things that will cause you to waste your God given breath
that.
on
Absolutely.
something
But
just
I
as
try not to.
you try
I
not to. I
mean,
know, but we're all human, right? We're all human.
it's like it's thinking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about something, and if somebody asks me to do something, and I'm like, no, I'm not wasting my God given breath on that
Mm-hmm.
because it's not. That doesn't work for me, and it's okay to say if you don't want to say no. Just you know what, that doesn't work for me right now.
Right.
If you don't want to say no, and
Mm-hmm.
guess what? And you don't have to give a reason because you are an adult.
You absolutely right. And so what I am doing right now is for individuals who are interested in being a guest on the show, I just put in the link where you can schedule your own private session to be on the show, to be a guest on the show, and to talk about something that's important to you, be it trauma or relationships or vulnerability or divorce or whatever it is, right? If you want to schedule your own session, right? We're live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. And I put the link inside the chat. So you want to click on that and then go ahead and schedule a date and a time that works best for you. And we love to have you on. And what I'll do is I'll reach out to you after you scheduled, and then I'll help you to be prepared for the actual show.
Oh,
Yeah, so I've pasted in there. We got a couple people in the group right now, and so I'm sharing it with them so they can come on the show. And so before we close, any final thoughts? Anyone want to share anything or what you've learned or anything you want to contribute to the podcast?
I would like to comment
Okay.
on a lot of things that you said about your heart rate or anxiety or things that triggered you. Going into the military, the thing with the vacuuming. I mean, it touched on so many things that I've observed these years in marriage. That it was really helpful. And I want to tell you, I appreciate your sharing all that because it really did touch on a lot of the elements that I've had to deal with over the years. And I don't want to sound like I was suffering terribly, but years of walking on eggshells, trying not to trigger any um, over the top reactions to things. And one time I told my husband, I said, "You're reacting to this as if you walked in the house and found me in bed with another man." And I mean, it could be something like leaving a pot in the
Mm-hmm.
sink, or or not cleaning out the coffee pot, things
Right.
very inconsequential, but the reactions were so over the top. And so thank you for sharing some of that. I remember a time where the dog got out and I was, screamed at because the dog, she didn't have an accident. She just left paw imprints in the carpet that had been vacuumed. I mean, just the imprint of the little paws.
Mm-hmm.
So it really sort of solidifies my thoughts about where all this is coming from, because I don't think it was me. I really don't think it was me.
Right.
And so thank you for all that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that part too, because it encourages me to continue to share. And one of the things that I'm proud of me sharing is that because I have the courage to shed light on the challenges that most men have in relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to say, "Hey, listen, I know that you haven't had a space to be vulnerable, but that can't continue."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Today is the day that you got to change that. You have to come to a space where your children can be vulnerable, that your wife can be vulnerable, because according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're all chasing this experience, this feeling of loving and belonging.
Right.
And you cannot experience a sense of loving and belonging without that safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're constantly arguing, we're constantly fighting, we're constantly going off on people, that safe space is diminished. And it hurts that I can't that you're going off on me about something that is going in the trash. It's going in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I was upset about with my kids is in the trash right now, or in the recycle bin. I can't touch any of that stuff, and but they're not here, and I'm like, man, oh my gosh, if I just would have just let it go, and then why couldn't I let it go? Why couldn't I let it go? And because of somebody taught me about being a man and being the head of your household, and that everybody needs to listen to you, and the trauma that I went through, that kids need to be seen and not heard. And so, um, that part, when you get that moment where I can't wait till I'm an adult, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. And then when you're in charge, and that's your moment to be in charge, and you don't want to turn it down because this is your moment that I'm gonna stand up for myself. And then there's somebody who is trying to prevent you from being in charge. It gets frustrating
Wow.
because you've been waiting for this all your life. I've been waiting for this
So,
all my life, and then I get out of my house, and then now I gotta. And then that's just another part.
right. So
Um,
another part to it I want to say to the caller is that I don't know how long she was in her marriage, but during that time she was in her marriage, I want to just express to her that although her husband was going through some type of trauma that he had experienced as a child, or at some point in his life he had experienced. So it's kind of like it was an open wound. He had this open wound that spread throughout his family.
mhm.
And so she was experiencing his trauma, which bled onto her. And so now that she is going through this, I'm sorry, but divorce. So I want to explain to her that to be mindful of her trauma
Mhm.
that he may have caused. And so for her to understand um, what she had gone through, and to recognize that, you know what, I was probably traumatized from him.
Mhm.
So just to talk to someone, get the help that she may need, and to talk about it, journaling,
Mhm.
coloring. I find that I like to do adult coloring, and that really helps me. I also like to keep a journal. It's a messy journal, but only you're going to read it. And so when I go back and I read my journal, it makes me think about how I could do things differently, how I could respond differently, how I could react differently. And it could be a conversation that I had with my son that maybe was an ugly conversation. So I'm journaling that, what was said, how I felt, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go back and I'll read it, maybe a week, a month, or whatever. But it helps me to understand me. And it also helps me to understand triggers for myself and how I can better communicate to my family and my friends.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
one, do you have something, Gabby?
I just wanted to say thank you for that. I really appreciate that advice. I'm going to follow through with that because it is, again, it just it becomes a vicious cycle if you don't do something to break, sort of break the chain. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that.
absolutely.
And one of the things that I have been able to do now with people is I ask them, "Who told you that? Who told you that? I can't do this. Who told you that? Where'd you get that from?" And then when that gives them that moment to pause and to figure out where did they get that from. And like they'll say, I'm bad. The kids will tell me, I'm bad at math. I'm not good at math. I'm like, who told you that? I told myself, well, stop telling yourself that and let's look at something different. It like I say, when it comes to therapy, when it comes to mental health, it's a process.
It is. It's definitely a process.
It's a process that takes it takes a commitment on the individual to recognize that they can be more gentle with individuals, right? And be intentional, and that you can extend grace at any moment,
Right. Right.
right?
That gig.
Practice that gig. Be
Yeah.
gentle.
Grace.
Be gentle on yourself and on others. Be
Yes.
intentional with being favorable and happy, right? And then when all else fails, give yourself grace and give that other individual grace because they are going through some too,
That's
right?
right. Right.
At the
Absolutely.
same time, we want to make sure that you have healthy boundaries and that people aren't talking to you in your kind of way. Because we don't provide grace so that somebody can be mean to us. No, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. So Gabby, we got the link in there. We're here live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. If you decide you want to come back on the show, come on back on the show. If you have something in particular that you want to talk about, about vulnerability and how to move forward, or I don't. I guess I don't know.
Anything. A to Z. We
A
talk
to
about
Z, A to
Z.
Z, and I will say this, that when I realized that had I was hurting my wife, and I made this 180 turn to be a better person, and I wish that she had given me that one more chance.
Mm.
Um, I really wish that she would have given me that one more chance, because I thought I know that I got it now. And I at the same time I understand that I didn't have a record of the chances that I did ask for and that she did grant to me. And I had blew 20, 18, at least 17 chances. I blew 17.
So, my question to you, did you ask for another chance?
Yes. She was like, I'm good, bruh.
I'm all set.
I'm all set, right? I'm all set. I'm good. No, you didn't want me. And and like I said before, I understood why. Because I had heard her too many times, and like I tell a lot of my clients, I say everyone has a number, and I exceeded my number of chances, and that's why she went on and did her thing. So,
but there's also one thing about, and I can speak for women. When a woman gets to the point and says she's done, we're done. It takes a lot for a woman to get there to that place. It takes an awful lot for us to get to that place. But when we say and feel we are done, we're done. There's no turning back.
Yes, I understand. So, all right. Well, we're out of here. Thanks again, Gabby, for tuning in. We're headed out, and thank you again for showing up, and we appreciate you. All right, where's my music? Come on down here. Let's, huh?
I'll see you on Monday.
We'll see you on Monday. Yes. Yes. Have a good weekend. Thank you all for tuning in today for another amazing show where we talked about the impact of untreated trauma in relationships. Make sure you take the time out to get the therapy to help yourself and to help your relationship. Untreated trauma affects more people than you can imagine. I'm your host, Kent Franklin. Gloria's here. See you next Monday at 8 p.m. And we are out.
Let's go. They said I wouldn't make it, but I'm
here in Golden.
And I'm here.
Good night. All right.